Alright, in this video I'm going to be fixing up this steel entryway door. This one goes to my garage. I'm not going to put a new one in, I'm just going to use what I got and try and make it look a little better. You can see I've already put a new handle on it and the lock is old. Obviously the garage door opener is there. The previous owners had painted over all of the door hinges. So one of the things I did was go out and find some new hinges. Obviously we're doing everything in the house in black, so I'm going to try and match it. They are a little bit different because they're square on both sides, but I'll get to that a little bit later. But they are all 4 inches. And then I picked up this Weiser black deadbolt to go in there as well. And I got a square one because everything we're doing in the house is square. You can see that they routed the cable kind of oddly for the automatic garage door opener. I'm going to leave it like that for now, and maybe I'll fix it up later. So the first thing I did was the door trim. I already have videos on that, so I didn't bother filming that at all. So I did the door trim, and now I'm going to start working on the door. So the first thing I'm doing here is just removing the old deadbolt, and I'm going to get ready to put the new deadbolt in. I'm also going to temporarily remove that black handle and just go with nothing on the door because I got to paint it and all that stuff. So this old electronic door lock, you got to unscrew it from both the front and the back. There's about 6 screws in here. So there's 2 that went through the door. And unfortunately, it also puts holes in the door, so I'm going to have to fix those as well. And then there's some screws in behind the battery compartment as well, which also put holes in the door. So kind of a bummer. I do have to do a little bit more repair than I would normally have wanted to, but that's okay. And then there's some screws to the back as well. And once you get the ribbon cable out, everything is pretty much done. And then obviously you get the latch out as well. And that's it. So like I said, there's 3 holes that I need to fill on the front. And I think there's 2 on the back as well. I do a little bit of hand sanding. I don't do very much of that though, because it is kind of painful to sand through this 1980s / early 90s paint. So to remove the paint right down to bare metal, the first thing I'm going to do is bust out the Dremel tool and just basically grind off as much paint as I can. The Dremel leaves a bit of a smear, so I do come back with some sandpaper and a little bit of paint thinner and just clean the area up a little bit more. And now I'm going to do some bondoing. So I have 2 types of Bondo. One is glazing putty, but the first one I'm going to use is this product here, which is their more robust body filler. Obviously I just have this around from working on vehicles. I think if I didn't have the Bondo, I would probably just go for the glazing putty. It seemed to do a good job. And I do come around with the glazing putty and do some of the smaller sections. So for the Bondo, I'm just taking a golf ball sized amount, like they say in the instructions, and then just adding a little bit of the hardener and mixing it up. It turns into a different blue color. I don't know, maybe they have different colors, but this one's blue. Once you've mixed it around, you got to work pretty quick because it does harden pretty fast with the hardener. And I'm just going to fill in the screw holes and a little bit of where the paint got ripped off, just to make it a little bit flatter, so that you don't see the transition between where the paint used to be and where it is now just bare metal. Always remember that no matter what, you're going to have to sand that down, so you don't want to use more than you need, or you're going to be sanding for a long time. So once it's dry, I waited overnight, let it dry for a while. I just put some paper towel in the door, basically the Canadian door lock, and left it like that. And you can see I'm going to have to do some more sanding. Some bad paint job on here. They got a big seam where the door closes, and there's some paint runs. If you look right under where the door handle was, there's just a big glob of, I don't even know what that is. Maybe paint, some paint bubbling and that kind of thing. I use an electric palm sander to sand down the Bondo, and I do wear a dust mask for this as well as hearing protection, because I'm not really sure if Bondo is really bad for you to breathe in, but I would assume that it's not good for you. And then I do sand the entire door with the palm sander as well. And I'm using, I think, 180 grit sandpaper for the whole thing. And the palm sander gets all of those big paint runs down and a bunch of little chips as well. So after getting all the Bondo on, dried off, sanded down, I come through and paint the door for the first coat as well as the trim. And I just use a little foam roller for this as well. Just like in the last video I did, I use the foam roller because it just comes in the kit and it's free. And this first coat kind of lets me see how bad the door looks. So I then take this Bondo glazing putty, and same deal with the Bondo. You just take the little putty knife. Anywhere where there's a depression or it looked funny, I just took some of that glazing putty and gave it a smear with the putty knife, and then took some 180 grit sandpaper and sanded it down smooth. I also had to wipe it down with some paper towel, and then I just repainted the door. To cover that red Bondo, I had to do 3 coats of paint. Otherwise, you'd see the Bondo through the paint. So there it is, done, all painted up. Now I'm going to have to drill out a larger lock hole. For whatever reason, the door is fitted with a non-standard size lock hole. So I have this lock drilling template, which I got maybe 10 years ago. If you don't have one, they're really useful. So if you're working with a bunch of doors, getting one of these drill templates is 100% of benefit. And then I'm just using a hole saw on a drill to drill it out to a normal sized door lock. It does take a little bit of time to get through the steel on the door. Once you're through the steel, obviously it's just going to tear right through the wood, no problem. And I attack it from both sides. I don't try to go right through one side. Otherwise it's going to look really bad. So go about halfway through the door on one side, turn the door over, then go the other half from the other side. Like I said, failure to do that's going to cause the door to split, bubble, do all sorts of weird stuff. So don't attack it from one side. And then once you're done, just take off that door drilling jig. I think that this jig was like 10 or 15 bucks. It was pretty cheap. It might be a little bit more now. You can see that it ate up some of the paint. So I am going to take my paintbrush and just fix it up. For the most part, I think that is hidden under the door lock and door handle set. So it's really not that big of a deal, but I do try to make it look as good as possible. It may have been of benefit to have painted the door last actually, but whatever. Now, one thing I do to all these old holes, because they put different size screws in and stuff, is I just jam in some glue, and then I take some toothpicks and shove them in the hole and break them off. And then I let the glue completely set up, and that way when I put new screws in, they're not going to be all floppy and loosey-goosey in the hole. Now I do take a chisel and make the cutouts better for the door latches and the lock extension, that kind of thing. And then after I do the chiseling, I do paint inside the area I chiseled out. You can see the one there that I'm putting the door latch in. And that's just so you don't see that bare wood behind the door latch. Once I'm happy with the depth and the paint is dried, just take the 2 screws that came with the door handle, put them in. And the door handles I use are called the Halifax edition, and the company is Weiser. Then there's obviously 2 screws that go in the door handle to hold everything together, and that's pretty much it. Now, if you're an astute observer, you'll notice that I'm putting that door handle on backwards, and that is done intentionally. I'm going to put the deadbolt on in the correct orientation, but the reason we do it this way is because our kids go into the garage and absolutely raid the fridge of food. Sometimes we, on occasion, lock the door in reverse so the kids can't get out there and steal everything out of the freezer when we're not looking. It does seem weird to say, but it is a good call, I think. I did test out where the old door strike was before I put in this new one, and I'm happy with the location. It didn't bind up when I closed the door, that kind of thing. So I'm just going to use the exact same door strike location. And obviously give it a little test out, make sure it closes properly before I call it quits on that. Anyway, it's in good spot and it's good to go. And now I'm going to do the exact same thing with the deadbolt. Obviously set back on the deadbolt to the correct location based on the door, and then put the deadbolt into the door. Again, 2 screws holds everything into place. Give it a little test out, works fine. This deadbolt's a little bit strange because it's a low profile, so it's a little bit tougher to line up than some other deadbolts I've worked with, but overall not too bad. And then once everything's in place, obviously just put the screws in. So you can see that I'm putting the screws in on the inside of the door, which is where they should be, because I'm putting the deadbolt on in the correct orientation. Now these come with smart keys. To use the smart key, you just take the key that comes with the deadbolt, turn it 90 degrees to the right, insert their little smart key door lock changer. Now put in your key that you want to use and give it a turn and pull out that little automatic lock changer thing. And now the key that you want to work with it works, and the key that came with it does not work. So I do really like this smart key feature on the Wiser locks, and that's why I generally am going towards the Wiser brand of lock. Now I'm going to put in the catch for the deadbolt. Obviously it comes with monster screws, so it's going to take me a while to get those in, but eventually I get them in and give the door a test out, and everything works pretty good. The door can just close by itself. Obviously it's a garage door, so they're generally supposed to be automatic, and the lock works well. So you can see my door hinges have a rounded cutout for where the old hinges used to be, and the new hinges I got are square on both sides. Not a big deal. I just take a chisel and make the hinge cutouts square. They are slightly different shaped. As you can see, it doesn't extend across the entire door like the old ones used to, but that's okay. I just put in 4 screws. They line up where the old ones used to be. For the door side, I do need to drill 4 holes and then jam in the screws. You can see that I'm doing one hinge at a time as opposed to trying to do them all at once. Basically, did the one hinge, gave it a test, everything works good still. Then I took the top hinge off, installed the black one in the top, and then after I tested the top, I did the bottom as well. So one hinge at a time, and that way everything worked well and I didn't have to mess around too much with measuring or moving things around. So there it is with all the hinges in, the lock, the handle, everything's done, and everything's being repainted. Hard to see in the video, but the door looks a lot better just with the paint job. And that's what it looks like when I'm all done. So I'll throw up a side-by-side comparison in here somehow. And that's it. Anyway, thanks for checking out my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.